towards this topic, the starting of enclosures. From about the 16th century, when the price of wool went up in the world market, the rich farmers wanted to expand wool production to earn profits. They were eager to improve their sheep breeds and ensure good feed for them. They were keen on controlling large areas of land in compact blocks to allow improved breeding. So they began dividing and enclosing common land and building hedges around their holdings to separate their property from that of others. And very soon we can see that between 1750 and 1850, 6 million acres of lands was enclosed. The British Parliament passed 4,000 acts legalizing these enclosures. So the British Parliament passed act legalizing enclosures, and that was the end of the open fields and commons. The area which was earlier divided among the poor, or which was accessible to each and everyone through the open fields and commons, was very soon turned into the enclosures. If we come towards the next heading, that is the new demand for grains. Earlier, the food which was demanded by the common people, the quantity of food was not very high, the demand was not very high, but very soon the demand started rising. If we look for the reasons why the demand started rising, the very first we have to discuss is the rapid rise in population. Between 1750 and 1900, the population multiplied over 4 times, mounting from 7 million in 1750 to 21 million in 1850 and 30 million in 1900. This meant an increased demand for food grains to feed the population. If we go for the second point, due to industrialization, more people started residing in urban areas and the market for food grains expanded. Earlier, most of the people were residing in the countryside and they were mostly into the agriculture. So they practiced subsistence agriculture, and whatever was their need, they were producing themselves. But as soon the industrialization started taking place, more and more people started moving towards the urban areas. They left agriculture, but still the demand was there. So overall there was a decline in the production because the people were leaving agriculture and moving to the urban areas, but the demand was constant. And that led to the rise of the prices of food grains, and the market for food grains expanded. If we come towards the next point, the war between France and England further led to the demand for grains. By the end of the 18th century, France was at war with England. Prices of food grains in England skyrocketed because of this, encouraging landowners to enclose lands and enlarge the area under grain cultivation. Let's move towards the next point, that is the age of enclosures. In this particular paragraph, or in this particular heading, we'll come to know what was the impact of enclosures on the common people, or how they started cultivating more and more things, more and more food grains from these enclosures. The very first thing which we have to discuss in this particular heading, grain production grew as quickly as population. There was one particular amazing thing in England found during this particular time period, that earlier whenever there was a dramatic rise in the population, it was followed by the food shortages. But during this time period, particularly in the 19th century, this was not happening. Grain production grew as quickly as population. Even though the population increased rapidly in 1868, England was producing about 80% of the food it consumes. So now we have to look forward, what was the reason behind this rapid rise in the production. We can discuss two things. The first one is new lands were brought under cultivation. As there was a rise in the demand for the food grains, the landlords sliced up pasture lands, carved up open fields, cut up forest commons, took over marshes and turned larger and larger areas into agriculture fields. And in these agriculture fields, the production was there. The agriculture production was done over these fields, and that started supplementing the demands. If we look towards the third one, farmers began growing turnip and clover. There is a basic problem with the agriculture. If you continue doing agriculture on a particular field, it will lead to its loss of fertilization. So the farmer in England started growing turnip and clover. They found that this crops were basically the leguminous crop. If you are growing these crops, these had the capacity to increase the nitrogen content of the soil, which was very much important for crop growth. Cultivation of the same soil over a few years depleted the nitrogen in the soil and reduced its fertility. By restoring nitrogen, turnip and clover made the soil fertile once again. So on one particular field, you can grow the crops again and again, and you can easily supply the demand made by the market. Now let us move towards the next. Let us see what was the impact of the enclosures on the poor. What happened to the poor? When fences came up, the enclosed land became the exclusive property of one landowner. The poor could no longer collect their firewood from the forest or graze their cattle on the commons. They could no longer collect apples and berries or hunt small animals for meat, nor could they gather the stalks that lay on the fields after the crops were cut. Everything belonged to the landlords, everything at a price which the poor could not afford to pay. So simply their life was ruined. Earlier they were enjoying their life in the open fields and commons, but once the enclosures started, they were, they were totally ruined, they were unemployed, they were searching for new jobs. If we look towards the changes in the social life of the labor, if we look towards the time period earlier than the present one which we are talking about, earlier the farmers used to reside with the landowners themselves. There was no difference between the farmers and the landowners. The landowners used to keep the farmers with themselves. They were not treated as the workers. But during this particular time, there was a complete change. By 1800, laborers were being paid wages and employed only during harvest time. As landowners tried to increase their profits, they cut the amount they had to spend on their workmen. Work became insecure, employment uncertain, income unstable. For a very large part of the year, the poor had no work. And then came the next heading, that was the introduction of threshing machine. Introduction of threshing machines. As the landlords were finding that if they employ less and less number of farmers, that will increase their profit, they started depending on threshing machines. The other factors were also there. During the Napoleonic War, prices of food grains were high and farmers expanded production vigorously. Fearing a shortage of labor, they began buying the new threshing machines that had come to the market. If we look towards the next point, decline in demand after the end of Napoleonic War led to the agriculture depression. But during the Napoleonic War, lots of farmers were engaged in the war. They were taken as soldiers and they participated in the war. But once the war was over, these farmers started returning back to their villages. They needed alternative jobs to survive, but this was time when grain from Europe began flowing into England, prices declined and an agriculture depression set in. Agriculture depression means there was lots of production, but there was no one to buy it. So prices started declining rapidly, and that led to the starting of agriculture depression. So to come out of this agriculture depression, the landlords tried to cut wages and the number of workmen they employed, and this led to a wide-scale unemployment among the farmers. The farmers felt that the cause behind this unemployment or the cause of their misery was these machines. Earlier they used to work in the fields, but now their work has been taken over by the machines. So Captain Swing riots spread in the countryside at this time. For poor, the threshing machines had become a sign of bad times. If you remember at the starting of this module, we were discussing about Captain Swing riots, and I said that we first of all we have to work out what was Captain Swing or why these riots were taking place. So this one was the answer. Captain Swing was a mythic name. Nobody named Captain Swing was there. The farmers who did this riots just gathered themselves under the name of Captain Swing and they started attacking on the machines. They started attacking on the machines because they felt that their work has been taken away by the machines. They have become unemployed because their work was taken away by the machines. Thank you.